The silence in the grand ballroom didn't just fall, it crashed. On the night of the gala, the only sound Tiana Edwards heard was the terrifying chime of vintage crystal shattering against the marble floor. Panic blurred her vision as she dropped to her knees, frantically picking up the jagged shards with bare, trembling hands. She braced herself for the screaming, for the punishment. Instead, the room turned suffocatingly cold. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Min-Tae Woo, the most feared mafia boss in Seoul, stepped into the mess. At 44, he commanded storms. His dark tattoo peeked above his collar, a warning to anyone who dared look him in the eye. But he didn't look at Tiana with anger. To the horror of the elites, the dragon of Seoul knelt on the unforgiving floor. He took her bleeding hand in his luxury wristwatch glinting against her skin. "Leave the glass," his voice rumbled like a shield. What happens when the invisible maid becomes the obsession of the man the whole world fears? Hello, family, welcome back. Before we dive into this intense romance, I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your flag in the comments and hit subscribe if you love stories about justice. Now, let's proceed. The air in the Edwards apartment was thick with the scent of a dinner Tiana hadn't been invited to eat. She stood by the sink, scrubbing a scorched pot until her hands were red and sore. In the living room, her brother Marcus was trying on expensive new sneakers while their mother watched with pride. "Tiana," her mother said, her voice sharp as a slap. "Transfer your paycheck to my account tonight. Marcus needs gear for tryouts. He has a future." Tiana froze, gripping the sponge. "But Mom, I needed that for my own rent." "I can't." "Exactly," Marcus snapped, looking at her with zero gratitude. "You finished high school, and frankly, we're carrying you. You are a financial drain we can't afford if I'm going to make the league." The silence that followed was deafening. To them, she was already a ghost. "You have your hands," her mother added coldly. "The world is full of floors to scrub. We've done our duty. Now it's Marcus's turn." Her mother stood up, eyes cold. "If you aren't paying for this roof, you don't sleep under it. Give us the money, or get out." Tiana looked at them. Really looked at them. They didn't see a daughter, they saw an ATM. If she stayed, she would never leave. That night, Tiana didn't argue. She went to her small corner of the room, packed her single worn bag, and walked out into the brutal wind. "Don't expect us to come looking for you," Marcus called out, laughing as the door closed. Chapter 2. The wind outside was brutal, but Tiana didn't turn back. She had nowhere to go, except for one desperate option. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled flyer she had hidden weeks ago. "Live-in maid wanted. Woo Estate. Night shift." She had been too scared to call it before because of the owner's terrifying reputation, but now fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She took the bus to the hills, shivering as she approached the massive iron gates that looked like a fortress. She pressed the intercom, her voice shaking. "I'm here for the trial shift. The agency sent me." The iron gates of the Woo estate looked like the entrance to a castle. Tiana felt small as the heavy metal doors opened. Security guards with serious faces checked her bag. They looked for weapons, but all they found were old clothes. Tiana walked up the long driveway to the massive house. Inside, the head housekeeper, Mrs. Park, was waiting. She looked stern. She handed Tiana a black uniform and a white apron. "Listen carefully," Mrs. Park said, her voice sharp. "You are here to clean, not to be seen. And there is one golden rule. Never look Mr. Woo in the eye. He is a dangerous man, and he does not like to be watched." Tiana nodded, her hands shaking as she held the uniform. For the first week, Tiana worked harder than she ever had before. She scrubbed floors until her knees bruised. She polished silver until her arms ached. She tried to be invisible, but she saw him. One afternoon, while dusting the grand staircase, she looked down. Min-Tae Woo was in the hallway. He was wearing a dark suit and looked like a storm cloud. A man was kneeling in front of him, begging for something. Min-Tae didn't yell. He just signaled to his guards, and they dragged the man away. Tiana held her breath, hiding behind a marble pillar. He was terrifying. He moved like a tiger, quiet and deadly. She quickly looked away, remembering the rule. She didn't want to be the next person dragged away. It was late at night. The house was finally quiet. Tiana thought everyone was asleep. She went into the library to dust the tall bookshelves. The room smelled like old paper and expensive wood. It felt safe. As she worked, she started to hum. It was a sad, slow song her grandmother used to sing. Her voice was soft and sweet in the large, dark room. She closed her eyes, swaying a little. She didn't know she wasn't alone. In a large leather chair in the darkest corner, Min-Tae sat. He held a glass of drink, but didn't move. He watched the maid with the curly hair. He listened to her sad song. For the first time all day, his shoulders relaxed. He didn't speak. He just let her sing. Tiana was rushing to the kitchen with a stack of towels. She turned a corner too fast and almost ran into a solid chest. She gasped and dropped the towels. She looked up in panic and saw a sharp jawline and cold eyes. It was him. She froze. She quickly looked down at the floor, her heart pounding like a drum. Min-Tae didn't move. He looked down at her. His eyes stopped on her shoes. They were old, held together with tape. "What is your name?" His voice was deep and low. Tiana trembled. She thought she was in trouble. She thought she was fired. "Tiana, sir," she whispered. The silence stretched out. She waited for him to yell. Instead, he just stared at the top of her head, a strange look on his face. The grand ballroom was filled with laughter and the clinking of expensive glasses. Tiana moved through the crowd, carrying a heavy tray of crystal flutes. Her hands were slippery with sweat. Suddenly, a guest bumped her shoulder. The tray tipped. Crash. The sound of shattering glass silenced the entire room. Tiana dropped to her knees, her heart hammering against her ribs. She began picking up the sharp shards with her bare hands, cutting her skin. I'm sorry," she whispered, waiting for the yelling to start. Then, a shadow fell over her. The crowd parted. Min-Tae Woo stood there. He didn't look angry. To everyone's shock, the scary boss knelt on the floor beside the maid. He took her bleeding hand in his. "Leave it," he commanded softly. "You are not made to bow to my floor, Tiana." He looked at the staring guests with cold eyes, daring them to speak. Tiana looked up, seeing not a monster, but a shield. The next morning, Tiana was summoned to the main hall. Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper, looked nervous. "Mr. Woo has given orders," she said stiffly. "You are to be removed from the cleaning roster immediately." Tiana's legs gave out. She grabbed her apron, tears spilling over. "Please," she begged. "I need this job. I have nowhere to go. I'll work harder, I promise." She didn't hear the heavy footsteps approaching behind her. "Why are you crying?" Min-Tae's deep voice echoed in the room. Tiana turned, wiping her face frantically. "I'm sorry for the glass, sir. Please don't fire me." Min-Tae frowned, stepping closer until he towered over her. "Fire you?" He shook his head, his expression intense. "I did not say you were fired, Tiana. I said you were promoted. You will not clean this house anymore. You will live in it." Two guards escorted Tiana to the East Wing, where only important guests stayed. They opened the door to a room bigger than her family's entire apartment. It had a bed covered in silk, a bathroom with gold taps, and a window overlooking the city lights. Tiana stood in the center of the room, still holding her small, worn bag. She felt like a thief. This luxury was for princesses, not for maids who dropped glasses. She was terrified to touch anything. When night fell, she looked at the massive, soft bed. It felt wrong. It felt like a trap. Instead of climbing in, Tiana took a pillow and curled up on the rug in the corner. The floor was hard and cold. It was the only thing that felt familiar. The next day, racks of clothes arrived. There were dresses made of soft velvet, silk blouses, and coats that cost more than Tiana made in a year. A team of stylists tried to measure her, but Tiana pulled away. "Stop," she cried, backing into a wall. "I can't pay for this. I don't have money." The door opened and Min-Tae walked in. The stylists froze and bowed. Min-Tae looked at Tiana's frightened face. "I am not asking for your money," he said calmly. Tiana shook her head. "Nothing is free. What do you want?" Min-Tae stepped closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "You live in my house now. How you look reflects on my honor. Do not insult me by wearing rags." Tiana lowered her eyes, trapped by his pride. She let the stylists measure her, feeling the heavy weight of his generosity. That evening, Tiana was told to dress in one of her new gowns. It was a simple, elegant navy blue. She was led to the private dining room where Min-Tae sat at the head of a long table. He gestured to the chair beside him. Tiana sat, her hands trembling in her lap. The food smelled delicious, but her stomach was tied in knots. He was so powerful, so old compared to her, and so dangerous. "Eat," he ordered gently. She picked up her fork. "Tell me about your family," he said suddenly. Tiana froze. She thought of her mother screaming and her brother laughing at her. She thought of the cold wind when they kicked her out. They're good people," she lied, her voice shaking. "They miss me." Min-Tae watched her closely, his dark eyes seeing right through the crack in her voice. He knew she was lying, but he didn't say a word. Min-Tae sat in his dark office, the only light coming from the city below. His head of security walked in and placed a thin brown folder on the desk. "The report on the Edwards family, sir." Min-Tae opened it. His eyes scanned the bank records. He saw years of transfers, every dollar Tiana earned sent to her mother. He saw photos of her brother wearing expensive clothes while Tiana's school records showed she requested free lunch. They treated her like a mule, working her until she broke. Min-Tae's hand tightened on the paper until it crumpled. She had lied at dinner to protect these monsters. A cold, dangerous rage filled his chest. They didn't love her, they used her. He closed the file, his jaw set like stone. "Keep eyes on them," he ordered, his voice low and sharp. "They will pay for every cent they stole." Late that night, Tiana brought fresh towels to the private gym, thinking it was empty. She pushed the door open and froze. Min-Tae was standing by the window, and he wasn't wearing a shirt. Tiana gasped. His back was covered in a massive, dark tattoo of a dragon, its ink swirling around thick, jagged scars. It looked like a map of violence. Min-Tae turned around slowly. He didn't cover up. He saw her staring at the old knife wound on his ribs. "It scares you," he stated flatly. Tiana shook her head, stepping closer. "It looks painful," she whispered. Min-Tae looked down at the scars. "Power has a price, Tiana," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "I endured this pain so that no one could ever make me weak again." For a moment, the scary boss looked just as broken as she was. Min-Tae led Tiana to the East Wing's music room. She usually only dusted in here, but today the door was wide open. In the center of the room sat a beautiful, shiny black piano. "You hum when you clean," Min-Tae said, standing by the door. Music should be heard, not hidden. Tiana walked toward it, her fingers trembling as she touched the smooth keys. "Is this for me?" she asked, her voice small.
Min-Tae nodded.
A smile broke across Tiana's face, a real, bright smile that reached her eyes. She sat down and played a simple, happy melody. Min-Tae watched her, unable to look away. He had seen beautiful things before, but nothing had ever captivated him like the girl who found joy in his dark house. Not everyone was happy for Tiana. In the hallway, a maid named Sujin watched through the crack in the door. She gripped her mop handle, her heart burning with jealousy. She had worked for Min-Tae for 5 years and never got a smile. Tiana had been here a month and was living like a queen. It wasn't fair. Sujin pulled her phone from her pocket. She aimed the camera at the music room.
Click.
She captured the image of the feared mafia boss leaning over the young maid, looking at her with soft eyes. Sujin smirked. She knew a tabloid reporter who paid cash for secrets. She hit send. Tiana thought she was safe, but she was about to learn that envy is just as dangerous as hate. The next morning, the mansion felt different. The staff whispered in corners, stopping when Tiana walked by. Confused and anxious, she went to find Min-Tae. He was in the library, staring at a tablet with a dark expression. "Sir?" she asked. He looked up, his eyes full of worry. He turned the screen around. Tiana's blood ran cold. There was a photo of them at the piano. The headline screamed, "The Dragon and His Maid. Mob Boss's Secret Love." "No," Tiana breathed, backing away. "Everyone will see this." She wasn't invisible anymore. The whole world was watching, and she knew her family would be watching too. The walls of the fortress suddenly felt very thin. Terror gripped her throat as she realized her hiding place was gone. In the cramped Edwards apartment, Marcus was scrolling through his phone, ignoring the unpaid bills on the table. He stopped, his eyes widening. "Mom," he shouted, shoving the screen in her face. "Look at T." On the screen, Tiana was sitting at a grand piano, wearing a dress that cost more than their car. Standing over her, looking obsessed, was the infamous Min-Tae Woo. The mother grabbed the phone, staring at the diamonds on Tiana's wrist. She didn't see her daughter's happy smile. She only saw dollar signs. "She's been holding out on us," she hissed, her voice dripping with greed. The realization hit them both instantly. Tiana wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a gold mine. Marcus smirked, leaning back. "She thinks she can leave us behind," he laughed darkly. "We need to remind her who she belongs to. We need our cut." Tiana was in her luxury suite, staring at the city, when her phone buzzed. It was her mother. Her stomach dropped. She answered hesitantly. "Hello." "Tiana, baby?" Her mother's voice sounded weak and shaky, like she was in pain. "I'm so sick, baby. The doctor said it's my heart."
"I'm scared."
Tiana gripped the phone, her guilt flaring up instantly. She forgot about the insults and the neglect. She only heard her mother crying. "I miss you so much," her mother sobbed. "Please come home. I just want to see you one last time." Tiana's eyes filled with tears. She felt selfish for being safe in a palace while her mother was dying in the slums. "I'm coming, Mom," she whispered. "I'll be there tonight." She hung up, her heart torn between the man who protected her and the family who raised her. Tiana threw on a coat and rushed toward the main entrance, her bag over her shoulder. The heavy doors didn't open. Instead, Min-Tae stepped out from the shadows, blocking her path. He looked huge and immovable. "Move aside," Tiana said, her voice trembling. "My mother is sick. I have to go." Min-Tae didn't blink. "It is a lie, Tiana," he said calmly. "They saw the news. They want money, not you. Tiana felt a flash of hot anger. How could he understand? He had no family. You don't know them, she shouted, pushing against his chest. You think you can control everything, but you don't own me. I'm not your prisoner. Min-Tae's eyes darkened with hurt, but he stepped aside. Go, he said softly. But remember who really cares for you. Tiana didn't look back. She slipped out the side gate, her heart pounding with rebellion. She felt smart for escaping his control. She hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address to the bad part of town. As the car moved away from the wealthy hills, the clean streets turned into cracked pavement and broken streetlights. Tiana told herself she was doing the right thing. Her mother needed her. Min-Tae was just being paranoid and possessive. She gripped her bag tight, convincing herself that blood was thicker than water. She got out a block away from the apartment, the smell of old trash and city smoke filling her nose. It felt like walking back into a cage, but she walked forward anyway, blinded by duty. The old key still fit the lock. Tiana pushed the door open, breathless and worried. Mom, she called out, rushing into the living room. I'm here. She froze. Her mother was sitting on the couch, smoking a cigarette, looking perfectly healthy. There were no doctors, no tears. Marcus stood behind the door and slammed it shut, turning the deadbolt with a loud click. Tiana spun around, confused. You said you were dying, she whispered. Her mother laughed, blowing smoke into the air. I am dying, Tiana. Dying of poverty while you play house with a billionaire. Marcus stepped closer, a cruel grin on his face. You're going to call your boyfriend, he demanded, blocking the exit. And you're going to ask him for $5 million. Or you're not leaving this room. Tiana's heart shattered. Min-Tae was right. It was a trap. It wasn't just about the money. Tiana watched in horror as Marcus pulled out a burner phone. He wasn't calling Min-Tae to ask for a ransom. He was calling someone else. Yeah, I got her, Marcus said into the phone, his eyes cold and greedy. The dragon's girl. She's here. Tiana's blood ran cold. He was talking to the Viper clan, Min-Tae's worst enemies. She's the bait. Marcus laughed into the receiver. You get the girl. You get the dragon. Just make sure I get my cut before the bullets start flying. Her mother sat on the couch, counting imaginary cash, not caring that her son was selling her daughter to killers. They didn't just want to use her money. They were willing to trade her life. Tiana realized with a sick feeling that she was nothing more than a worm on a hook to them. Tiana backed into the darkest corner of the room, sliding down the peeling wallpaper until she hit the dirty floor. The tears didn't come. She was too numb. All her life, she thought if she worked hard enough, if she was quiet enough, they would finally love her. But to them, she was just meat to be sold. Min-Tae's deep voice echoed in her memory. It is a lie, Tiana. He had tried to protect her, and she had pushed him away to run back to wolves. She looked at her family, strangers with cruel faces, and her heart finally shattered completely. She wasn't an Edwards anymore. She was just a girl who should have stayed in the fortress. She closed her eyes, trembling, and prayed the dragon would forgive her for leaving. Back at the estate, Min-Tae stood in his command center, his face terrifyingly calm. On the large screen, a small red blinked in the middle of the slums. It was the GPS signal from the diamond watch he had placed on Tiana's wrist. She was stationary. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and picked up his long black coat. Prepare the cars, he ordered. His voice was quieter than a whisper, but his men scrambled in fear. They knew that look. It wasn't the look of a businessman. It was the look of the dragon waking up. He walked to the garage, his stride long and purposeful, and stepped into the lead car. "No mercy tonight," he said to his driver. "Burn it all down." The residents of the crumbling apartment block had seen police raids before, but they had never seen this. A line of 6 black armored SUVs rolled down the broken street like a funeral procession. The engines growled low and deep, vibrating the windows of the nearby shops. Streetlights seemed to flicker and die as the convoy passed. Drug dealers and thugs on the corner dropped their stash and ran. They knew what the crest on the car doors meant. The Woo clan was here. The cars stopped in perfect unison in front of the Edwards building. Silence fell over the block. It was the heavy, suffocating silence before a bomb goes off. The neighbors locked their doors and turned off their lights. The Reaper had arrived. Inside the apartment, Marcus heard the heavy boots stomping up the stairs. "Who is that?" he shouted, trying to look tough. He barely got the words out before the front door exploded inward off its hinges. Splinters flew everywhere. Min-Tae stepped through the dust, looking like a nightmare in a suit. Marcus lunged forward with a kitchen knife, screaming. Min-Tae didn't even slow down. He caught Marcus's arm and drove a fist into his face. Crack. Marcus dropped to the floor, clutching his broken nose, wailing like a child. 2 rival gang members in the kitchen reached for their guns, but Min-Tae's guards dropped them with 2 silent shots before they could aim. Min-Tae stepped over Marcus's writhing body and looked at Tiana huddled in the corner. The violence vanished from his eyes. "I told you," he whispered, reaching for her. "I would always find you." The apartment was silent, save for Marcus's whimpering on the floor. Min-Tae stood over Tiana's mother, who was now trembling and begging, pleading that she was forced to do it. Min-Tae didn't look at her. He turned to Tiana and pulled a heavy black pistol from his coat, offering it to her handle first. "They sold your life," he said coldly.
Decidete irs.
Tiana looked at the gun, then at the people who shared her blood. She didn't take the weapon. Instead, she stood up, wiping her eyes. She looked her mother in the eye, seeing only a stranger. "I don't need a bullet to kill you," Tiana said, her voice steady and final. "You died the moment you locked that door. You are dead to me." She turned her back on them, walking out of the room without looking back, leaving them alive but erased from her soul. The ride back to the estate was quiet. Tiana sat pressed against the leather seat, shaking as the adrenaline faded. The realization hit her in waves. She was an orphan now, in every way that mattered. A sob escaped her throat, raw and painful. Min-Tae didn't speak. He simply pulled her across the seat and wrapped his arms around her. He held her tight as she cried for the mother she wanted but never had, and the brother who betrayed her. He let her ruin his expensive suit with her tears, stroking her hair until her breathing slowed. "You are not alone," he whispered into the darkness. "The fortress is your home. I am your family now." For the first time, Tiana believed him. Min-Tae didn't kill the Edwards family. He did something worse. 2 days later, his lawyers purchased the entire apartment building. An eviction notice was slapped on the door, giving them 24 hours to leave. When Marcus tried to join the basketball league tryouts, he found his name blocked from every roster in the state. His mother's bank accounts were frozen for fraud investigation. They were left on the street with the bags Tiana had once packed. They had traded a queen for a few dollars, and now they had nothing. Min-Tae watched the report from his office, his face impassive. He had promised to protect Tiana, and in his world, protection meant ensuring the threat never rose again. They were ghosts now, haunting a city that no longer cared. 1 year later, the grand ballroom was filled again for the anniversary gala. The air didn't smell of fear this time. It smelled of roses and expensive perfume. The doors opened, and the room went silent in awe.
Tiana walked in.
She wasn't wearing a maid's uniform or looking at the floor. She wore a gown of shimmering gold, her head held high, her eyes bright with intelligence and confidence. She walked through the crowd that once ignored her, nodding graciously. On her finger, a massive diamond ring caught the light. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was the lady of the house. Min-Tae met her at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes full of pride. He took her hand, and this time, he didn't have to kneel to save her. The party faded into the background as Tiana and Min-Tae stepped onto the private balcony. The city of Seoul sprawled below them, a sea of lights. Tiana rested her hand on her stomach, where a new life was growing, an heir who would never know hunger or cold. She leaned her head on Min-Tae's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. The scared girl from the alley was gone. "Thank you," she whispered, looking at the stars, "for seeing me when I was invisible." Min-Tae kissed her forehead, his cold exterior melting completely. "Thank you, my love," he replied, pulling her closer into the warmth. "For saving me when I was lost." They stood together, the dragon and his queen, ruling the night. Remember this, a diamond doesn't lose its value just because it's sitting in the dirt. Tiana didn't change who she was, she just changed where she stood. Never be afraid to walk away from a place that makes you feel small, because somewhere out there is a life waiting to treat you like royalty. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs this message. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Drop a flag of your location in the comments if you made it to the end. Thanks for watching.